Hi, everybody. I'm Mike. This is Budget Guns and Good Reviews, and you are listening to The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So uncover your keyboards and fire up your fingers and enjoy the conversation.
Hey there, everybody out there on YouTube and gun channels. This is Mike, and as I said, you are listening to The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second. It is... Well, hold, stop. There we go. I was getting a little bit of feedback because I forgot to mute the window on YouTube. But now, all is well. Anyhow, it's good to be back. I had my little hiatus last week. Went camping and hiking and such and fishing, which was pretty much a bust. It was wet and we couldn't keep a fire going to save our lives, and fish wouldn't even bite. So that kind of sucked. I went home and did some shooting instead. So got a lot to talk about this week. Some really I hate to use the phrase earth-shattering, but it's because it's not quite that level, but it is pretty big news out of Washington with the announcement of Kennedy's Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy's retirement. That is a potentially tremendous development in the Second Amendment world. We'll talk about that. We also have, of course, we're going to discuss Maxine Waters' remarks and encouragement to stalk and harass Trump's cabinet and the responses that they're being urged to take. The elephant in the room, the newsroom shooting in Maryland. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. And if we can get to it, Ohio has decided to delay voting on their stand your ground law. And then we have one interesting self-defense shout out to talk about later. But before we go do that, I want to run through the chat out there. Looks like we got Patriot in the Dark. Really, he's the only one out there on the YouTube side. So hello. He's the only one that's saying anything anyhow. Let's see who we got. Yep, this Patriot so far. Gun channels. I'm
Semper Fi, Patriot.
Not seeing anybody out there, so hopefully we can get some people coming in. Yep, nobody else on the gun channel side, but that's okay. It's early in the show yet. So here on the panel we got Matt, 50 caliber Karma. How you doing, sir?
I'm warm but excellent.
Warm but excellent. That's right. You're out there in sunny California, about to enjoy the seasonal fruits of the sun, huh?
Dude, sunny, barely begins to describe it. It is sun blasted, I might say.
Sun blasted. Ooh, that does not sound good. Noah, how you doing?
Great.
For those of you who don't know, Noah is my friend Two Bob's son. He is also been in a video or two. He's the fella that I borrowed the Heritage Rough Rider from, and he was in that video. He also is kind of my shooting buddy and sometimes camera guy.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Squib, how you doing, sir? Glad you can make it.
Hey, thanks for the invite. And also, for those of us who can't hear and decide to listen to the shows after the fact when we're not in them, in a loud environment, so we have to have our volume turned up all the way, I appreciate the fact that your intro music was not blaring. Most of the shows, the intro music is so loud, and then when the people start talking, they're really, really quiet.
Oh, well, I'll remember that.
So I appreciate the fact that your volume of your intro music matches the volume of your voice. I appreciate that.
Well, outstanding. I will attempt to pay more attention to that in the future. That'll really solve itself once I eventually get a mixer and I can run everything through that. But right now I'm kind of doing it the caveman way. But I remember
Well,
to do it
ideally, people would like to listen live with speakers on their computer at home and be able to move around the room and hear just fine and whatnot. But what if you're at home and you have to wear the headphones, or you got earbuds, or you have to have one earbud in and one earbud out? What if you're like me, you're at work, I work in a factory, and I play catch up on I know I'm not the only one who plays catch up on the shows. And so not everybody catches a show live. Or if you're in the house and there's people in the background and you try not to be too loud for them because they're not trying to be too loud for you. So it's nice when you don't have to run and turn the volume down and then crank the volume all the way back up. So I do appreciate it.
Well, thanks for the heads up. I will absolutely keep that in mind for future shows. Looks like we got a few more out in the chat. We got Patriot, Maxwell. For those of you who may not put the last name together, I don't know if you guys know my last name, but Maxwell happens to be my son. So, hi, Max. I'm glad to see you watching. Glad to see you commenting. Thank you, son. Patriot, John Brown. Hello to you guys. All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive right into this right now. Piece from Breitbart. I'm going to go over here for a second, but just to set it up, for those of you who do not know, Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy announced his retirement effective July 31st this week. I think that he picked a perfect time to announce that retirement because it will give the Republicans enough time to get a nominee chosen and start to have confirmation hearings and get this process going before the midterm elections in November. The Dems are already screaming to high heaven and trying to do everything they can already to block the nomination and create as much fuss and chaos and confusion as they can. However, I don't really see it going anywhere. I don't really see their efforts coming to any fruition. They're already drawing the comparison between what happened with Merrick Garland during the presidential election year and this, saying that, during election year, you shouldn't hold the confirmation hearings and a vote on a Supreme Court nominee. It should be until after the elections. However, they're neglecting to mention that the difference being that this is not a presidential election year. This is a midterm election year, and it's not really an apples to apples comparison. It's an apples to oranges comparison. So why is this important for the gun world, for the Second Amendment community? It's a Supreme Court guy. Well, I've said time and again that the Supreme Court is where we're going to block all this anti-gun garbage. I've brought up the Second Amendment Foundation fighting these unjust and tyrannical laws in court all the time. And that's why the Supreme Court is so important. And that's why having elected Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton was so important for the Second Amendment community. So to go into the piece from Breitbart, another Trump justice means a more secure Second Amendment. 27 June 2018. With news of Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy's retirement, pro-gun voters took a deep breath and understood a more secure Second Amendment could lie ahead. After all, President Donald Trump gets another Supreme Court pick, and he has already made clear that his pick will be made from a list of accomplished individuals who are constitutional originalists, i.e., individuals who approach the Constitution like Antonin Scalia and Neil Gorsuch. Scalia's brilliant and originalist mind was on display in the seminal Supreme Court ruling, District of Columbia versus Heller in 2008, and Gorsuch's similar mind was seen from the very start of Senate confirmation hearings. Breitbart News reported that Senator Dianne Feinstein used the opening day of the Gorsuch confirmation hearings to talk up an assault weapons ban and her desire to get commonly owned semi-automatic rifles out of the hands of private citizens. The next day, she tried to get Gorsuch to voice support for the gun controls, but he demurred, saying, Heller makes clear that we judges are to apply. The question is whether it's a gun in common use for self-defense, and that may be subject to reasonable regulation. That's the test as I understand it. There's lots of ongoing litigation about which weapons qualify under those standards, and I can't prejudge that litigation sitting here. During an October 9, 2016 presidential debate, Trump told the American people that he wanted to do regarding the Supreme Court. He said, I'm looking to appoint judges very much in the mold of Justice Scalia, people that will respect the Constitution of the United States, and I think this is so important. Also, the Second Amendment, which is totally under siege by people like Hillary Clinton. Trump made clear that his Supreme Court picks will respect the Second Amendment and what it stands for and what it represents. And now Trump gets another opportunity to choose a justice in the mold of Scalia and Gorsuch, saving the Second Amendment from people like Hillary Clinton and making gun rights more secure in the process. It just came out today that Trump plans to announce his pick on July 9th. Just FYI. Go ahead. Night Strike, good to see you.
Yeah, I came and I was working in the background and I had your show on. I wanted to make a comment on the whole Democrats are wanting the whole Supreme Court pick after the elections. And the reason why they're wanting that is because they are so blind in believing that they're going to get, the majority in this next election. They think they're going to be the majority and that they're going to have the pick of a Supreme Court justice, or there's not going to be a pick until the next presidential election. And I'm telling you right now,
I was going to bring up, but you kind of beat me to it, brother.
If they think after all the shit that's going on, all the bad press they've been getting on TV because of what they've been spewing, all the propaganda, they think they're going to get elected and get the majority. I mean,
that's what they're hoping. That's why they want to make as much fuss as they can to try to push this back past the elections, because they believe that they have an opportunity to pick up seats in the Senate and therefore be able to block any nominations that Trump may make. That is why it is so important for us as gun owners to mobilize not only ourselves, but everyone we know that would have a conservative leaning to get out to the polls this midterm election and vote and make sure that the Senate remains in the hands of the Republicans. And as a matter of fact, if we can, pick up some seats. Because
Clint out there on the YouTube side is saying they're delusional. They are way past delusional and off into la la land. That's how bad it is for the Democrats.
Yeah, absolutely. But if we just sit on our asses and don't go out to the polls, they might. Yeah. They might pick up some seats. So we can't let that happen. We have to get out there. I hate to say we have to get out the vote, but we have to get out the vote. We have to mobilize ourselves and everyone we know who may vote in a more conservative way to get out there, get to the polls on this election cycle, and make sure that the Democrats don't pick up those seats in the Senate. Because
just the other day, I had to vote for my governor because I am registered as a Republican here in South Carolina, though I'm more along the lines of, constitutionalist libertarian, because I am Mr. Shall Not Be Infringed. But the thing is, it was either the current guy who was put in place by, what's her name? What was the previous South Carolina governor, Nikki Haley. And it was her lieutenant governor, McMaster. He became the governor. And it was between him and some guy out of Greenville. And the only reason why I voted for McMaster, he's the sitting governor, the incumbent, is he did say he would like to ban bump stocks, but nothing's gone through in the South Carolina government on that. And two, over the other guy said he would have to think about the situation before, signing an open carry bill, whereas McMaster has said, I'll sign an open carry bill if you bring it to my desk.
Oh, awesome.
So,
that would make my choice for me.
He doesn't want bump stocks, but again, he's willing to sign an open carry bill. So I'd rather have him where he is than elect some guy who has actually been proven to be anti-gun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it was a runoff election because McMaster didn't get enough votes during the Republican primary for governor here in South Carolina. But after the runoff, everybody voted for him anyways. So,
well, it seems like it's a case of move the ball down the field wherever you can.
Right. I think he's going to get reelected regardless because McMaster, well, yeah, he has had some issues here and there. He did really well when it came to governing and taking care of the state emergencies when we had Hurricane Matthew come through. So, if he continues to do stuff like that, I think he'd be an all right governor.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, hopefully it works out for you guys.
I'm sorry to get into some of my local politics, but it just happened this week.
All politics is local, man. Come on.
I literally had to get, I had to find out where I had to vote. I only had an hour left. Luckily, the voting poll was just like, half a minute down the street. I could have walked and made it there in time and gone and voted. So it turned out all right.
Maxwell Kreitzer, my son, has a question out there in the chat. It says, my question is about Democrats. What's their goal in banning firearms? Well, that's a huge question, boy.
It's called the perfect socialist utopia. There was one once upon a time. You might have heard about it. It was this wonderful country in the 1930s and 40s called Germany.
Yeah, a lot of people believe that the Democrats' goal is to impose socialism upon, well, not just our country, but the rest of the world. And that the way that they can, the biggest obstacle that stands in the way of that is an armed citizenry who can resist that. If we aren't armed, we can't resist. And that really, really boils it down to it's.
Remember, the Second Amendment is our last line of defense against tyranny.
Absolutely right. That's exactly what it's for.
And it's also to protect the First Amendment, because if we don't have the Second Amendment, you won't have the First Amendment. You won't have the Third, the Fourth, the Fifth, the Sixth, the Seventh, the Eighth, the Ninth, or the 10th. And you may not even have the amendments that abolish slavery either. Okay?
No,
just FYI.
You wouldn't have anything because the Second Amendment's the teeth of the Constitution. Period.
Police states are not fun countries. Let me tell you. Just ask Venezuela.
Yep.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories of their military and police just killing people left and right down there.
Didn't that just happen where they reported that their military shot a bunch of civilians and stuff?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely right. And by the way, welcome, Ro. Glad to see you can make it.
But if you look at countries that went completely to the left, went socialist, they haven't gotten dictatorships yet, but some of them have. But they don't normally end well for the common citizen. The normal average Joe like you and me. We get hosed in a socialist police state.
Oh no, it's the elites that rule the country. That
only the people in charge of the country benefit in a police state in a socialist government. Here in the United States, we have a republic, not a democracy. Don't let the Democrats brainwash you into believing that this is democracy. It's not.
No, it's a representative republic.
Because it's a republic because that's what Ben Franklin said it was.
Yep. Two hotties out there wondering how much caffeine has Night Strike had today.
Night Strike has had entirely not enough caffeine today, but he is here and he is ready.
Ozark Yeoman says he doesn't know. Let's give him a Red Bull.
I'm fired up this evening. I've been working all day.
Dang. Well, one thing that we've seen is that the left won't shy away from using whatever tactics they can to try to gain predominance in our political arena, up to and including outright harassment and political violence. I mean, just look at the ball field, the Republican softball practice that Democrat gentleman shot up with an SKS and wounded Representative Steve Scalise. So violence coming from the political left is absolutely nothing new.
No,
and we have more of that. We have more of that being called for by the left. For those of you that hadn't caught it earlier this week, Maxine Waters was at a rally calling for people on the left to basically harass and hound anyone in the Trump administration that they can find, whether they're in restaurants or gas stations or libraries or the supermarket, anywhere. They need to form a crowd and start chanting and basically harass and harry them, and or very thinly veiled go into violence.
Remember, when that guy shot Steve Scalise, Scalise didn't blame the gun, didn't blame the capacity, didn't blame the caliber. He blamed the individual that went and, did the deed. He didn't blame the gun. He still supports the Second Amendment, regardless of what happened.
That's right. Clint Torres brings up a very good point. I just caught my eye. Democrats don't believe in gun control. They believe in gun consolidation under the power of the state. And that's it. That is exactly it.
We need to translate that for everyone. That means they and the government have them. We all don't.
Correct. But in response to this is a piece from Breitbart. Trump aides advised to get guns carry permits amid threat of violence. Aides to President Donald Trump are being advised to get guns and carry permits amid a growing threat of violence following comments by Representative Maxine Waters, Democrat, California, and others. NBC News quoted Waters speaking to reporters over the weekend saying, "If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd and you push back on them and you tell them they're not welcome anymore anywhere." Waters made her comments over the same weekend that White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders and her family were refused service at the Red Hen in Lexington, Virginia, and followed off the premises. Media
that's almost borderline inciting terrorism.
Just about. Mediaite reports it was also the very weekend on which Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi was confronted with screams from huge angry men at the Tampa Theater, forcing her departure. Now voices as disparate as actor James Woods, law professor John Bansoff, and Crime Prevention Research Center's John Lott are advising individuals in the left's crosshairs to get guns and or concealed carry permits. Woods tweeted, "Buy guns, vote. Violence is the next stop on the Mad Maxine slippery slope. We will fight back." The Washington Examiner quoted Professor Bansoff as making a similar argument, but addressing it more specifically to aides of Trump. Bansoff said, "High-level officials in the Trump administration, especially if their faces are likely to be recognized by many in the public as a result of appearances on TV, might want to consider applying for a license to carry a concealed weapon in the District of Columbia and or other states they frequent, in view of the call by Representative Maxine Waters for a public to absolutely harass these officials in public places, and other recent events indicating the increased danger therein." Lott observed, "There are simply not enough police in D.C. or Virginia or Maryland to protect all Trump officials at their homes and when they go out to restaurants. Getting a concealed handgun permit would be helpful to protect themselves and their family." And I agree. This kind of brown shirtism is really, it's the hallmark of the left. They want to claim that it's the right that does this, but frankly, it's been a hallmark of the left ever since the anywhere that there's been a socialist / communist revolution. This is the first steps in it.
Yeah, I hate to keep on harping and quoting Nick Freitas of Delegate of Virginia, but he's right. I mean, what do you expect from the party that was for slavery, was against women's suffrage, was the party that instituted the whole Asian concentration camps during the 40s, during World War II. Okay,
they weren't concentration camps; they were internment camps. There's a big difference. I'm not saying it was right that we did it, but you have to understand the mindset of the people back then. It was a different time, it's a whole different era. But please don't call them concentration camps, because in concentration camps, they execute people. We didn't execute the people in the internment camps.
That is an important distinction for sure.
Regardless, it wasn't the Republicans. It wasn't any other party other than the Democrats that voted and instituted on that, because guess who had the majority of the Senate, the House, and the presidency at that time? Well, it wasn't the Republicans.
Yep. It was the Democrats. Same party.
Yeah, but the Democratic Party used to be the conservative party a long time ago, too. So just be careful about how you phrase it.
And now Squib starts talking.
I don't know everything about history, but I try to study history to try to understand the present. I also try to study history so I can be a more well-rounded American. I find it ironic that the people that have been typically saying that the people on the right, the Republicans, the conservatives, even to some extent, I suppose, the libertarians or whatnot, are the traditional bad guys, and we're the benign good guys, but yet they're the ones calling for violence. And they're the ones who say, we want to take away your right to bear arms. And,
but don't worry, the state will protect you.
But in the process, though, they're making threats against people who have to bear arms to protect. So some of the people that might be applying for these permits, which I wasn't even aware that you can get one in the District of Columbia because it's so anti-gun there, but
well, in theory,
they would actually have to bear arms in order to protect themselves against the people that say that they're better than them. It's just it'll mess with your head. Just be better if we could all get along somehow.
That ain't gonna happen. Anything.
That's never gonna happen.
Well, do you guys ever think that sometimes these guys, and this would include rhinos, take up the anti-gun side because it's the easier side to take, whether they believe it or not, or whether they don't even care about guns or not? If you're on the side that says guns are bad,
whatever's going to get them votes. That's all it is.
Right. That's what I mean. It's the easier side to take to get votes, because how many people out there don't know jack crap about guns, how they work, gun laws, the history of guns in America? Most people don't. Okay, they know what they see on TV and they believe that crap. They know what they see in the movies and they believe that crap. They actually, when they watch these movies, they think these guns really do these incredible things that we all know they don't do. So knowing that most people out there are ignorant, and it's not necessarily by truth, they're just not interested in guns, so of course they're ignorant and their facts all come from entertainment or media. Wouldn't it be easier to be on the anti-gun side if you were trying to weasel votes? But what if most of people in America didn't believe that stuff in entertainment? Most people in America carried concealed open. The gun ranges were so packed that you couldn't even get a spot, and the gun companies couldn't keep up with, the ammunition companies couldn't keep up, because most of America was not only armed, but informed. Then what side would it be more advantageous to be on to get votes, right? Pro-gun. But unfortunately, it's not that way. So I think you're right about saying get out there and vote. Absolutely. And I think bringing to light some of the things that are going on in your state, Night Strike, is useful to people who aren't, I can't vote in your state, but it's just useful because if we start to see something like that here happen in Michigan, okay, now they trying this in another state, or this is what's going on. Maybe it'll help me make my decision to vote in my state where I can. You know what I mean? So
right, and my decision right now. Well, yes, I know. I love bump stocks. I love having my own. I love the whole the trigger actuators. I love that kind of stuff. But the thing is, I understand not everybody does. But again, because my governor, he supported legislation to ban it. He can support it all he wants. But as governor, he can't institute it unless it gets through the Senate and the House. So he can say this and that all he wants, but if the Senate and the House drag their ass and don't do anything, then nothing's going to happen. So, but again, that's just one thing. He does support open carry, and he's supported by Trump and the NRA. So I know we all how we all feel about the NRA, but again, I would rather have him over a guy who doesn't have an answer for open carry.
Well, I mean, we all thought Trump was going to come into office and be this Second Amendment savior, and so far he hasn't been. As a matter of fact, even though I voted for him, and even though I think he's a better choice than Hillary,
I do too.
I've been a little disappointed. Now I'm not like angry, throw the bum out, blah blah blah, kind of, but I've been a little bit disappointed that he hasn't done more. And I'm just wondering if he just told us what we wanted to hear. And, you know, maybe we weren't the only group, too, that he just, you know, to get, and I know that's what politicians do, right?
Well,
historically, that's what they do.
Remember, politicians are only going to give you half of what they promised ever.
So would,
I was going to say, I'm fixing to mute some dudes. Even if Trump doesn't push forward a pro-gun agenda, I don't care. Number one, he's not pushing anything, well, severely pushing anything anti-gun other than this whole bump stock thing, which is my biggest disappointment. The only reason I voted for Trump, not the only, but by far and away the largest reason I voted for Trump was to keep Hillary Clinton from getting Supreme Court justice picks, because that would have lasting repercussions for the next 30, 40 years of a justice's tenure on the Supreme Court. So far, Donald Trump has picked Neil Gorsuch, who is, from everything that I can see, everything that I've heard, everything that I've read, is a Second Amendment supporter, and he now has another chance to pick a Supreme Court justice who may be a much more firm, hopefully, if he keeps picking people along the lines of Gorsuch, will be a firmer supporter of conservative values, and more specifically in regards to this show, the Second Amendment, than Kennedy was, who, as let's not forget, was the swing vote on the court. You know, you had the 4 solid conservatives, you had 4 solid liberals, and you had Kennedy in the middle as the swing vote who could go either way, giggity. So
that's true. That's true. But I just think that, and don't forget the whole due process later thing. When Trump said that, it's like, whoa, dude, really?
That. But if he's picking
he could pick somebody
nominees, that's a moot point, because the Supreme Court can overrule all that crap. Also,
I understand that, but the fact that he would say that means that his decision on who he picks may not necessarily be what we expect. And didn't he appoint that nice circuit judge who's anti-gun? So, because he's his buddy or something. So, I mean, I understand that's a circuit court judge, but I mean, that's a hurdle you have to get over to get to the Supreme Court. So all I'm saying is we can be hopeful, and we have a better chance with Trump of getting somebody in there that's more level-headed. But there's a chance.
All I can tell you is that if we had President Clinton right now, we'd be getting some barking, mad, raving lunatic moonbat on the Supreme Court for the second time.
Absolutely.
If Hillary Clinton was elected, we'd be in the middle of a civil war right now.
Well, if you're going from the lesser of two evils aspect, then yeah, we are better off. Yes, you're right.
You know, it's the Supreme Court is the most important aspect of this presidency, I think. That's going to be the lasting effect on America. Because remember also, he's probably going to get at least another pick, a third pick. When Ginsburg retires, she's probably not going to last another year or so at most. You know, she's holding on as long as she can, but she's getting up there. And I suspect that Trump's going to get yet a third pick after Ginsburg goes. And then that could potentially be a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court in favor of our gun rights. And that is huge. That is tremendous. That's how we're going to win this battle. You know, the left is taking things to the local level in politics, you know, with their AstroTurf organizations from the top down, you know, funded by Bloomberg and Soros and the rest of them. And, you know, they're going at the local level. As a matter of fact, right now in our local area, a local township is trying to pass a noise ordinance that's targeted at people target practicing on their property. You know, they want it to be anything over 90 decibels for over an hour, and 1 hour in any 24, you can't do it. You'll get fined, et cetera, et cetera. And which I think would be completely
Oh, no, that's
overturned
easy to
anyway.
fix. That's easy to fix. Just make silencers more easily attainable,
yeah.
right?
But I think
Sure, there we go.
I think it would be an illegal ordinance anyway, because since it's targeted specifically at gunfire, I would say it falls afoul of the state's preemption statutes. But you know, I don't live in that particular township, and I can't bring that suit. But I hope somebody who, if they pass this ordinance, I hope somebody who lives there does. Anyway, but my point is that they're going at this at the local level with all these, the state and local level with all these gun control measures. And the way we're going to defeat this is via the courts. And if we have a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court, kiss gun control goodbye for the next 40 years, at least. That's what I think. I could be wrong, though.
I'm hoping. I'm praying.
Yeah, well, Clint Torres says he has a list and they're all strict constructionists. That's what I read today. He's got a list down to 5. He's going to be interviewing some over the weekend and over the 4th of July holiday and whatnot. And on July 9th, Trump is going to announce his nominee. So hopefully that process will get going, and they will get, if McConnell isn't a complete idiot, we'll have that, we'll have an up or down vote on that before the election. Hopefully. All right, now, one of the giant elephants in the room we're going to have to talk a little bit about is this shooting in Maryland at the newspaper. Maryland authorities confirmed 5 dead, 7 injured in newspaper office shooting. 5 individuals are dead, and at least 7 persons are injured after a suspect opened fire in the Capital Gazette newspaper office in Annapolis, Maryland. Suspect was arrested on scene, and WJLA reports that a shotgun was involved in the attack. CNN quotes a law enforcement source saying the suspect has not been cooperative. Capital Gazette reports reported that Phil Davis was at the newspaper headquarters when the shooting occurred. He tweeted, but I didn't get the tweet copied down in my stuff. Dang it. Let me see if I can find that. Oh, well, anyway, and Arundel County Executive Steve Shue spoke at his press briefing held by police and grieved over the fatality, saying, "I don't know what to say except our thoughts and prayers are with them and their families, and we would take comfort knowing they're in God's embrace." Maryland has a ban on assault weapons, high-capacity magazines, and bump stocks. They have extreme violence restraining orders and require new handgun purchasers to submit fingerprints to the Maryland State Police for registration. Well, hell, none of this should have happened. How did this guy get in there and shoot people? I'm sure they had a sign, didn't they? They had a sign. They had assault weapons ban. They can't get bump stocks. They have to be fingerprinted for handguns and purchases and, you know, all this gun control. How in the hell did this happen? Wait, they're not doing enough. They got to ban shotguns too. Watch. That'll be next. That'll be next. Does anybody know, has anybody heard what, if they've talked about a motivation for this? If it was a workplace violence thing, if it was a domestic thing?
That's what I was wondering.
Because I have not heard that. I haven't been able to find any information on what the motive is.
Neither have I.
So if anyone out there in the chat happens to have that information, that would be wonderful if you would let us know. I want to back up a second and go back up the chat for a minute.
We're having a good conversation today.
Yeah, oh yeah. Let's see, where is it? Ah, yes. Ozark Yeoman pointed something out, which is funny. Not funny. Haha, funny, a little bit.
Funny looking.
He said, ask the Poles, Hungarians, and Serbs why they staunchly allow gun rights. Nazis, Soviets, and empires killed enough of their people, and it's the only true way to defend themselves. Breitbart did it.
Swiss too.
What's that?
The Czechs and the Swiss too. They love their guns.
And that's
the Swiss. It's more like every man is a a member of the militia because, you know, they don't have a large army. But yeah, the Czechs too. Seriously.
It's funny you mentioned the Czechs because Breitbart did a piece. Breitbart London did a piece. Czechs hit back against EU crackdown on legal gun owners. Free countries don't disarm their citizens. Czech President Miloš Zeman, I'm sure I butchered your name, fella, and I'm sorry, has put his name to a petition opposing an EU diktat which would clamp down on legal gun owners and backed a constitutional amendment which would guarantee citizens' right to keep arms for self-defense and protection of the homeland. This is from 22nd June 2018. The directive on tightening control of firearms under the guise of counterterrorism was approved by European Parliament in mid-March. It would see the Czech Republic, which combines comparatively liberal gun rights with low levels of crime and extremely low levels of terrorism, forced to impose new restrictions or face sanctions from Brussels. Center for Civic Freedoms founder Václav Klaus Jr., son of former President Václav Klaus Sr., complained that the governments of non-democratic and fascist countries disarm their citizens, not free countries. The petition urges the Czech government and parliament to reconsider and endorse and approve an amendment to the constitutional law on the security of the Czech Republic, enshrining into our constitutional order the right to legal possession of weapons for defense and internal and external security of our state, and has already acquired some 170,000 signatures. President Zeman, a Eurosceptic critical of mass migration and veteran of the Prague Spring uprising against the Soviet puppet government under communism, has previously called for a European Second Amendment along American lines to deter terrorists. The level of international crime is growing because of Islamic terrorism, he told the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe in late 2017. I am open and frank, and I do not use the phrase Islamic terrorism lightly, but in an overwhelming majority of cases, it has Islamic origin. It is connected with genocide in Armenia. President Zeman added, what can we do against an international criminality? Invest in the police, invest in the army, and have the courage to invest in our own guns. My wife has a pistol. Of course, she passed all necessary tests, but now I'm guarded by my wife and not only by bodyguards, he smiled. The Second Amendment to the American Constitution says that everybody has the right to have a weapon. Of course, they must fulfill necessary conditions and tests. We Europeans are a little more careful than the Americans, but after Barcelona and many assassinations, I think the difference between Europeans and Americans is not so great. Good for the Czechs. They make damn good guns, too. They should be able to own them and have them just like we do.
Yes, they make good guns, and they should be able to own them, too. But I think they were trying to point out that, you know, while we have lots of problems because we are a large country ourselves, we don't have nearly as much problems as they do in Europe because, you know, more of us are allowed to own firearms.
That's it. That's exactly right.
That's what it sounded like he was relating it to.
That's exactly right.
So,
you know, they need to be able to have the means with which to defend themselves.
I won't say our model's the best and that we get everything right.
No, we don't.
We don't get everything right. But for us right now, I'm going to make a blanket statement here, so correct me after I finish. It's worked so far for us for what, 200 years? Give or take?
Yep.
It's worked for us for at least give or take 200 years. So there might be some stock in letting the civilians own firearms.
Yep.
Just saying.
Out there in the chat. Let's see. Patriot says the guys had issues with the newspaper. They printed he was abusing someone and they printed it. So he's been against them for years since 2011. Let's see. Calaveras 32 Special says this guy has a grievance with the paper after they reported he had been convicted of criminal stalking and he has been repeatedly threatening the paper. Okay.
So does that make it like the YouTube shooting then?
Yeah, something like that. This is a nut job with a grudge against the
media.
paper.
Yeah.
Man, what a shame. It's these guys, the reporters that were there, were tweeting and such about how this one fellow in particular sticks in my mind that they were hiding while this guy was shooting people and listening to him reload and everything. And I can't help but put myself in that situation. And how bad would it be to be absolutely and utterly helpless while someone is hunting your coworkers down, potentially hunting you down, and going to do everything they can to kill you. And to listen to this guy killing people and listen to this guy reloading his weapon and know that there's not anything you can do about it because you're unarmed. You know, I don't know that if anyone in that newsroom, in that newspaper office, I can't say for sure that if someone had had a firearm with them, that they would have stopped it, that they would have done anything to change the outcome. But what I can say is that it would have changed the odds. You know,
but see, that's where the sign thing would come in handy. Big sign, front door, says, our employees are armed and we will stop any violence, threat, whatever that comes in here. You know what I mean?
That's the
Instead
only
of a little sign that says no weapons allowed, let's put one in there that says our employees are armed and trained.
Yeah. You know, and by the way, I can't claim that authorship of the "it would have changed the odds" thing. I kind of stole that from Susanna Hupp from the Luby's cafeteria shooting, where she had left her legally carried pistol in her vehicle because the cafeteria had Luby's cafeteria had forbidden the carry of firearms in there. She obeyed the law and left her pistol in the truck when the crazed gunman drove a truck through the door, not through the door, but through the wall, and started shooting the place up, killed her parents in front of her. When she was testifying in front of Congress, you know, a senator, I think it was Schumer, as a matter of fact, asked her, you know, what makes you think that anything would have been different? And she said that she didn't know that anything would have been different. The only thing she could say is that it would have changed the odds. And I have to agree with her. I think that it applies in this case as well. It's sad that those people didn't have the option to defend themselves.
It is. It truly is.
Speaking of defending yourself, Ohio delays stand your ground law that would expand gun rights for residents. It's from WEWS.com. It's a news station out of Cleveland. A gun rights debate on hold in Ohio. Even though state lawmakers were supposed to vote on a stand your ground law this week, that vote was delayed. Democratic Representative Dave Leland and others said the upcoming midterm elections played a role in stalling the bill. It's a law very similar to that in Florida George Zimmerman cited during the Trayvon Martin case, which this is factually inaccurate. George Zimmerman never cited the stand your ground law in Florida. Never, not once, not ever. It's the media that tried to harp on that and turn that into something. So stop lying, WEWS. For gun rights advocate Larry Pope, president of the North Coast Defense Academy, he believes the new proposed law is on par with how things should be. It's common sense legislation, in my opinion. We have the right, and have always had the right, to defend ourselves. But law experts like attorney Michael Washington say it's not that simple. In the language of the law, as it's been proposed, there's no differentiation between the use of deadly force or non-deadly force. So right there may be some situations where litigation could arise. Judges in Florida are grappling with that now, having a backlog of cases because of confusion of how their law is worded. It essentially means that I felt threatened, and there's nothing that needs to be done to prove that they felt threatened, and it's almost impossible to counter that kind of statement. The same confusion he and others warn is something Ohio could also face. Ohio is the first state to propose gun legislation since the Parkland shootings. The bill is opposed by Governor Kasich, but has support from majority Republicans. It will not be looked at again until legislators return from summer break. What they are failing to mention is that in Ohio, the burden of proof when you're claiming self-defense rests upon the defendant, not upon the prosecution, where it does in 49 other states. This law would have removed that burden of proof from the defendant and placed it upon the prosecution, just like it is in 49 other states and like it should be in all 50. That's what they're complaining about. So the state should have to prove that you are guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You should not have to prove that you are innocent. And currently in Ohio, in a self-defense case, that's what you must do. And it's bullshit. So be glad the rest of you live somewhere civilized. All right.
Is there any way that you can have your legislators put that on a ballot for a vote, like they do for medical marijuana or anything like that?
Yeah, there is a ballot initiative process in Ohio. I'm not sure why that hasn't been. I'm not sure why it hasn't been approached that way. We do have several pretty up and on it Second Amendment organizations here in Ohio, and I'm not exactly sure why they wouldn't have done it that way. If they haven't, it is probably because they're doing it through the legislative process would be a more sure thing, I would guess. Yeah, 505 Jesus is God talking about Susanna Hupp said she'd never follow that law again. She'd rather be sitting in jail for a felony and have her parents be alive than to do the same thing again. And then I agree with her 100%. Talking about the Luby's cafeteria thing, going back to that. All right. Well, now we've had all this serious stuff, so we're going to go ahead and end on a high note. As always, I like to do a self-defense shout out. For those of you that are new to the show or haven't had an opportunity to listen to the end, I usually end things on what I call a self-defense shout out. It is not glorifying or reveling in the death of a bad guy. It is glorifying and reveling in the continued ability of a good guy to pursue their own life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And because they had the means and ability to defend themselves from someone who had deprived them of those things. Out of Virginia, Goochland mom shoots man who flew around the world to track down her teenage daughter. This is from WTVR.com. Goochland County, Virginia. The FBI is now investigating after a woman shot a New Zealand man outside her Goochland County home Friday afternoon. Troy Skinner, 25, flew to Virginia to meet the woman's teenage daughter after the two chatted online using Discord, a service popular among gamers, the Goochland County Sheriff said. The 14-year-old girl's mother shot Skinner when he attempted to break into the family's home in the Holland Hills community, the sheriff said. He was not invited here, he was not expected here, and he had been told in the past that the daughter no longer wished to communicate with him, Goochland Sheriff Jim Agnew said. The violent encounter took place Friday when the mother was home with her two daughters. They heard Skinner banging on the door with a brick, the sheriff said. When the mother called her husband, he told her to grab a gun. When Skinner threw a landscaping stone through the glass door, the teenage girl's mother fired twice, hitting Skinner once in the neck. He was taken to the hospital and is expected to survive the shooting. Skinner's longtime friend, who does not want to be identified, gee, I can't imagine why, describes his gaming buddy as an antisocial loner who was not a family man. Not many people know him that well, and he's got a really narrow group of people who know him. He didn't have a wide social circle whatsoever, said his friend. There's a group of 7 people who have known him for a long time and chat with him daily or semi-regular basis on game-related stuff. His friend said he knew Skinner was traveling to the U.S., but thought he was headed to the West Coast for a visit with friends before pursuing his studies in law at the University of Auckland. The original plan was for him to meet up with some American friends in Portland, Oregon, said Skinner's friend. He arrived in L.A. and was going to take a bus up, I believe, and the American friends were going to pick him up. When he didn't show up, they Googled his name and found the news report basically saying that he was in Virginia. I'm so bewildered by what happened. I don't know what was going through his head. That was so outrageous. Everyone who knows him is like, what the hell has happened? This is so out of character. He's got no history of drugs, no criminal record. He may be a little aggressive, but nothing really crazy, his friend added. The sheriff said Skinner first encountered the 14-year-old girl using Discord chat service. After 3 or 4 months of conversation, the girl attempted to end their communication. The younger daughter attempted to stop communications with him. He was opening other accounts in an attempt to keep communications open, and she did not cooperate with him, said Sheriff Agnew. Skinner then flew from New Zealand to Australia, Australia to Los Angeles, and Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. From D.C., he took a Greyhound bus to Richmond. In Richmond, he stayed at Hosteling International USA, according to the investigators. When he arrived at the family's home, he yelled that he'd hitchhiked 30 miles to the house and needed help. This was not random, not spontaneous. This was something very planned, Sheriff Agnew said. He was carrying a knife, duct tape, and pepper spray that he purchased at the Short Pump Walmart when he arrived at the family's home. Then you hear about duct tape, knife, and are like, what the hell is this? Said Skinner's friend. He'd been on some medication and psychiatrist visiting his flat to discuss certain things. Apparently, there were some antipsychotics, so this sounds like a mental break of some description. His friend said Skinner had also mentioned to his flatmates that he was stressed about a relationship. Skinner has not yet officially been charged with crime, but there is a warrant out for his arrest, and he will be charged with entering a dwelling, house, etc., with intent to commit murder, rape, robbery, or arson. He was transferred out of the intensive care unit at the VCU Medical Center on Monday. He's accompanied by a deputy, but the sheriff says he isn't talking. Sheriff Agnew said Skinner had planned on returning to New Zealand June 30th. Skinner's friend said police in New Zealand were attempting to reach Skinner's father. His mother and sister, he said, live in Australia. So, let's be very glad that that family had the means, method, and opportunity to defend themselves and the will to use it. Because crazy can happen anytime, any place.
That guy was a nutbag.
Yeah.
Sounds like some sort of pedophile thing.
Yeah, well, that's a dedicated pedophile right there. He flew around the world to meet this girl. Wow. That's something. And that also goes to show you that you need to be very careful about who you're talking with online and who your kids are talking with online and what information is being given out. You know, that because you never know when crazy is going to latch onto you and come your way. All right, folks. So that being said, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank everybody out there in the chat for coming around and be a part of the discussion today. I'm really glad to have you here watching and have your input on this. Thank you very much for letting us know about the motivation for that nut job in Maryland at the Newsroom. I really appreciate that. Let's go ahead and go through the room. Noah, do you have anything you want to add?
I apologize for not really commenting at all throughout this podcast.
It's okay.
Yeah, I was working on my car a little bit.
It's quite all right. Roll call. Do you have anything to add, sir? Anything you want to plug?
No, just thanks for having me. I'm driving, so I didn't want to butt in too much. But yeah, thanks for having me. Guys, go check out my channel, Roll Call 219. And I got some cool videos on there. And go check out Budget Guns and Gear. He has some great ideas for camping, and he has some cool firearms that I'm hoping he's going to put on his channel here soon with his little thing he bought, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm planning to go out and shoot some video either tomorrow or Sunday. So, yeah. Going to do the Star BM9 and the Taurus Tracker for sure. And maybe something else. We'll see. Squib, anything you want to add? Anything you want to plug, sir?
Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, the only time zone, Caliber Corner on the Travis P11 channel and on gun channels.
Outstanding. And I'm going to go ahead and plug gun channels. If you are not a member of gun channels, go on over there. It is free. It is the water cooler of the Second Amendment community. You can find pretty much anything Second Amendment related to talk about at pretty much any hour of the night. If you're up and you're wanting to talk, there's someone there to talk about it with you. Also, I want to plug, since he left, I want to plug Night Strike's video service, GunTube. Go to guntube.org. You will not be silenced because of your political thoughts. You will not be silenced because you want to put up videos of guns, ammo, anything else. Pretty much anything short of porn, you're going to be okay. So go on over there, be part of GunTube as a creator, be part of GunTube as a consumer. If you can, go to GunTube's Patreon page and throw them some support. I do. You know, Night Strike is paying for all this out of his own pocket, and it is not cheap. So let's give him some help. That being said, come back next week, 7 p.m. Friday, for The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second. In the meantime, as I said earlier, get out the vote. Let people know what's going on and how they can help. Let your Congress critters and elected representatives know what you think. Send them to telephones, faxes, emails, telegrams, semaphore, smoke signals, anything in any way, even a carrier pigeon if you have to. Let them know what you think. Never, ever, ever give up the fight.